Good morning in Australia, in Melbourne, and good evening. Good morning in UK, in London, and good evening in Melbourne, in Australia. So today we have a match for the eighth finals, the round of 16 of the Inter-University Law Debate Tournament 2026, ninth edition, and that will be between indeed the University of Melbourne and the King's College London. For hosting this match, that will be my colleague Miss Berchetti. So I give the floor to Miss Berchetti.
Thank you very much. First of all, welcome everyone and congratulations for reaching to this state. Now I would like to move on with your introductions a bit, but before I would like to thank all of your coaches, both for assisting you and for attending the matches. And I would like to confirm that the topic is that government must prohibit addictive recommender designs targeting minors. Yes? Great. So now I would like to move on with the introductions, and maybe we can hear from Mr. Jay Foster from the University of Melbourne.
Hi, I'm Jay Foster, and I'm keen for the debate.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to Miss Louise Tabary from King's College London.
Hi everyone, I'm Louise, very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Now back to the University of Melbourne with Mr. Joseph David Callara.
Hi everyone, happy to be here.
Thank you. Now again with King's College London, Miss Afreen Ali.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to be starting the debate.
Lastly, from the University of Melbourne, Miss Cindy Nguyen.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Cindy and I'm here for the debate today.
Thank you. And last but not least, from King's College London, Miss Kailita Ramin Garcia.
Hi everyone, I'm Kalita and I'm excited to debate today.
Thank you so much. So now I will also give the floor back to my colleague, Mr. Lorange, to do the allocation of the positions.
Yes, so you will see my screen, and normally a wheel where you see there are two positions possible for the two teams to be in favor or to be against the motion. The team will be in favor, will be starting the match with the first introduction. So for this match, the University of Melbourne will be against the motion. So it means King's College London will be in favor of the motion, will be starting the first introduction. So now I will give you 5 minutes to review your notes. And I enjoy as well to thank one of the judges for connecting, so Mr. Kazi. So welcome for attending the match live. And if Mr. Kazi stay until the end, because he might watch as well the recording if he cannot stay, then we can ask as well his opinion on the match, first opinion at the end of the match. So now you have indeed the 5 minutes to review your notes, and then we hear the introduction by the team by King's College London. we are done with the 5 minutes preparation. So I give the floor as well to Miss Lal for the card for the timekeeping.
Yes, so just a heads up, when you have 30 seconds left, you will see this yellow card, and when the time is up, you will see this red card. As always, you are welcome to finish your sentence, but it is not viable to start another. With that, I'll pass the floor back to Ms. Berchetti to start us off.
Thank you very much. Okay, so to start with today's match, we would like to hear from the first speaker, the opening speech of the proposition of King's College London. You may have the floor.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I stopped engaging with my family members because I was spending all my time on social media, is what 20-year-old Kyla said in a landmark lawsuit KGM v Meta in 2026. She was 6 years old when she started using YouTube and Instagram, only to get addicted to them. The reason? Addictive recommender designs. Digital interface features and algorithms designed to maximize user engagement. Examples include infinite scroll, autoplay, hyper-personalized feeds, as well as social validation feedback loops. As proposition, we endorse this ban, and whilst the design is deployed across the entire user base, it explicitly targets minors because of their vulnerabilities to addictive features. And therefore, we will provide 3 arguments today. Why a ban fulfills a legal duty to protect minors, and secondly, why current legislation trying to target the issue is insufficient, making a ban both necessary and proportionate. And finally, why governments should be the one to impose this ban. First, there's a legal duty to protect minors as under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, where Article 3 states that the best interest of the child is a primary consideration, and Article 24 and 6 provide for the health and development of the child. The health and development of children are at risk, as the World Health Organization has shown that more than 1 in 10 children cannot control their media usage. And addictive recommender designs fuel this, as algorithms are designed to pick up on data based on what users interact with the most, and then continuously push this content onto them, regardless whether it's good or bad content. With a prohibition, less data would be picked up on users, and therefore, the privacy and autonomy of children would be better protected, as they're less likely to get addicted. Furthermore, additional legislation trying to tackle addictive recommender designs has been insufficient. Despite the UK age-appropriate code urging platforms to minimize data collection and nudges extending screen time, the code itself is not legally enforceable. Furthermore, the California Act protecting our children against social media addiction is also only a partial prohibition on addictive recommender designs. Even the strongest legislation introduced thus far by the European Commission, the Digital Services Act, is insufficient because it only applies to very large platforms, and where it does reach, platforms simply ignore guidelines, and TikTok's screen time too was deemed insufficient by the very commission that proposed it and imposed it. Therefore, it is clear, a ban is necessary because the legislation today cannot enforce its own standards. Furthermore, a ban is proportionate because there's a difference between regulating content and content itself, which was highlighted in the KGM v Meta case, which was looking into addictive recommender designs. In that case, Meta relied on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, which shields Meta from liability for third-party content posted online. However, the judge deemed that the way content is delivered and content itself are separate issues. Therefore, a ban is proportional because it's not banning content itself, but rather the way content is delivered to children. Finally, government should be the ones to impose this ban because they actually have the duty to protect its citizens, unlike firms. Private firms do not have the incentive to actually reform or prohibit or restrict their addictive recommender designs because that is what they profit from. Hence why there has been such a struggle to enforce current legislation today. They simply exploit the vulnerabilities that minors have to addictive features, as their cognitive systems for impulse controls remain underdeveloped, while their sensitivity to social rewards remain heightened. Therefore, why would private firms have the incentive to regulate addictive recommender designs when they profit the most from vulnerable children? And therefore, as proposition, we couldn't be prouder to propose today's motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we can move with the opening speech of the opposition given by the University of Melbourne. You may have the floor.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? Okay, perfect. Then I'll begin. In 3, 2, 1. Let me tell you what actually happens when a minor opens YouTube. They watch a video about kittens, then another video about kittens, and then a slightly different video about kittens. And that is what this debate today is actually about. The question is simple. What is the harm in that warrants intervention not just by families or domestic governments, but by a global international legal regime? Our case today is threefold. First, once we remove genuinely illegal content, there is no harm of the scale the affirmative has claimed. Second, their model simply does not work, and we know this because it has already failed. And third, even if states want to act, this is not something that should be globalized. Turning to our first point about what's actually in dispute, we agree there is vile content online. Child sexual abuse material, self-harm content, grooming and early exposure to other things. All of that, however, is already illegal and regulated. The EU's Digital Service Act, for example, imposes obligations on platforms, and the Australian Criminal Code criminalises grooming and exploitation. We entirely support enforcing those laws because they are effective. But strip that out, and what remains? A teenager watching 1,000 cooking videos, or a 13-year-old falling down a Gangnam-style rabbit hole? The algorithm is a librarian. It learns what you like and shows you more of it. And that is why minors sign in rather than browse anonymously. And even courts have recognized this. In Net Choice in Paxton, the Fifth Circuit held that algorithmic curation is itself expressive activity. The affirmative is trying to regulate exactly what courts are starting to protect. And so we ask, what is the harm here? If the answer is they might watch too much, that is not a civilizational crisis that warrants this. Children have always consumed media through television, radio, and novels, all of which were once accused of rotting young minds. That panic is familiar, but it is also usually wrong, as we've seen through history. Turning to our second point about how their model simply does not function, the law is slow. Many constitutions still say telephonic. That is the tortoise case we are working with. And now the affirmative wants to regulate algorithms that retrain themselves weekly. To provide one example of a jurisdiction that's failed, Australia has already tried. The Online Safety Amendment Social Media Minimum Age Act of 2024 imposes a ban, and yet 61% of children still access accounts, and 27% have moved to riskier, less regulated platforms. The policy is simply not protecting children. And Australia is the best case scenario. It has a single regulator, strong ID systems, and rule of law, and it still fails. Now scale that globally, and what ID system works in Indonesia? How about Nigeria? We note that the affirmative has failed to provide any details of their supposed ban, and so we challenge them directly. And we'll repeat this challenge until they answer today. Tell us how this works. Define addictive in a way that is not legally vague. Define minor in a way that is verifiable across 196 jurisdictions. Tell us what technology verifies age without creating a surveillance state. If they cannot tell you concretely how their world functions, it would be foolish to assume that it functions at all. Turning to our third point, how it should not be globalized. Beyond the family, we simply do not dictate how people spend their time, not through novels or films or hobbies. Doing so at the international level is not just intrusive, but is entirely absurd. And it also undermines development. We teach children to cross roads by walking beside them, not by banning roads until they're 18. And international law reflects this. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, as mentioned by the affirmative, protects a child's right to access information and preserves parental guidance, not state control over development. The affirmative's model cuts against both. And there are also simple solutions. YouTube Kids, incognito mode, sitting next to your child, and domestic legislation. None of this requires a global rule. The affirmative wants to be seen doing something. We are much more honest and want something that actually works. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We may now proceed with the rebuttal stage of the match, starting with King's College London, that is in favor of the motion. You have the floor.
I will start in 3, 2, 1. What the opposition has done here is try to minimize the harm by saying that once illegal content is removed from online platforms, recommender systems are no longer a problem. That fundamentally misunderstands the issue we are debating today. The harm is not limited to illegal content. It is about design features that drive compulsive use regardless of what the content is. Even seemingly harmless content, for example, endless cooking videos, becomes harmful if it is delivered through systems engineered to maximize time spent, leading to sleep disruption, reduced attention, lower impulse control, dependency on online platforms, and so much more. We know that this harm is real and widespread. A study referenced in our materials shows that 38% of children report negative experiences linked to addictive recommender designs, which demonstrates that this is not a marginal issue, it is more of a systemic issue. Similarly, 96% of children are using social media, meaning that the scale of exposure and therefore the harm is enormous. On the point of current regulation, which opposition claims it already exists, we agree, but it is clearly insufficient. Despite frameworks like Australia's ban, the Digital Services Act in the EU, and so on, features like autoplay, infinite scroll, and push notifications still persist, especially for minors. The continued litigation and regulatory action against platforms shows that existing measures are clearly not working. On the point of enforcement and bypassing age limits, again, imperfection does not mean failure. Even if some minors manage to bypass the systems, reducing exposure across major platforms is still a significant step towards lowering overall harm. Finally, on the point of globalization, this motion does not require identical implementation everywhere. The point of us reinforcing that governments should be the actors enforcing this ban is that governments are able to act locally, they are able to use localized domestic knowledge in order to ensure that the ban is working where it needs to be working. We're not advocating an identical implication, we're advocating for governments to act locally using their own enforcement tools and cultural understanding. So the opposition's case relies on minimizing harm and exaggerating enforcement challenges, and neither stands up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the University of Melbourne for their first rebuttals against the motion. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that you can see and hear me, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Then I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. The affirmative's case rests on a nebulous idea that states as a collective are some paragon of practicality that we can look towards to successfully implement such bans such as these. But there are some issues that the affirmative have failed to comprehend, which is firstly, between different states globally, there's a mismatch of definitions. There's no agreement as to what a minor is. There is no agreement as to what an addictive design feature is. And there is no agreement as to how information sharing is. And so the question that we put to the affirmative is, how is it that we're supposed to rely on the collective states to implement some sort of prohibition if there's no agreement between the states at an international level? Secondly, what we propose as an alternative and counter to the affirmative is that private firms are actually in the best position to advocate for these sorts of regulations or to look at what recommender systems can do, because they're in the best position to advocate for private interests and for economic interests as well. By allowing there to be the states in negotiation with the firms who own these recommended systems, we allow for correct proportionality to occur between harm and the benefits of recommended systems. And we also allow there to be a representation of economic interests as opposed to fully prohibiting market interests and the progression of technology. Proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm giving the floor back to King's College London for their second rebuttals in favor of the motion. You now have 2 minutes.
I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. The opposition has now shifted to the issue of implementation, but again, their arguments do not hold. Firstly, on the point of effectiveness of states, governments are already regulating this space. Under the Digital Services Act, platforms are already required to assess and mitigate risks to minors, and enforcement mechanisms include fines and even bans for non-compliance. Similarly, the UK framework has also imposed duties of care on platforms and driven tangible changes in how algorithms are designed. So the claim that states cannot act is simply contradicted by existing regulatory practices. Secondly, on the definitions and global agreement on certain points of how the ban would work, the motion does not require perfect international uniformity. Regulation already varies across jurisdiction, yet it still functions. Governments legislate locally based on their own standards and enforcement capacity. The lack of a single global definition does not prevent action, it simply means implementation is more context specific and therefore more effective. Thirdly, on the point of private firms being better regulators, this clearly ignores the core structural problem, which is that these companies operate on engagement-driven business models. As shown in public health data from the US, platforms generate billions and billions in revenue precisely for maximizing user time and attention, a large portion of which comes from minors. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube generate over $8.6 billion from minors using their platforms. Expecting them to voluntarily reduce and suddenly start self-regulating effectively is unrealistic because it clearly conflicts with their profit incentives. And importantly, we already recognize that self-regulation is insufficient. The reason that we have things like the age-appropriate design code is because we understand that external intervention is absolutely necessary to protect children. So overall, states are not only capable, but they're also the only actors that are capable. They're the only actors that would be legitimate and have the enforcement power to act effectively in this case, whereas firms have neither the incentive nor the accountability measures to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now finishing with the rebuttals, we're giving the floor back to the University of Melbourne, who is against the motion.
Hi, can you hear me? Just confirming everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We ask again because this question has been time and time again ignored. Specifically, how would a ban like this be implemented? A prohibition on all addictive recommendation systems, especially given that this is not just limited to social media, but limited to consumption at large. We note that the impossibility of this implementation is significant for 2 reasons. Firstly, it means that if this is not successfully implemented, then what we are seeing is a performative solution which obfuscates or removes the responsibility of individuals to take control of that. But secondly, losing that international goodwill then means that there is an opportunity cost in terms of the push that governments can make onto making more effective regulations that can actively prevent any sort of harms. But we would then respond to the 2 main points of discussion in this debate. Firstly, why governments themselves are the ones who are the bodies who are best or most apt to actually propose this ban. We would note that governments are not the correct institution to do so. Regulating the way in which information is disseminated, aka through these recommendation algorithms, is importantly a slippery slope that represents the potential for government overreach into the way in which information is disseminated. In allowing them to control addictive recommendation algorithms allows governments to have some say over how individuals actually achieve or reach this information. We would note, in fact, that under the UN Human Rights Committee, under General Comment 34, they specifically suggest that access to this information and information of public interest should be easy, prompt, effective, and practical. We would note that a recommendation algorithm that provides users with information that is important to them does exactly that. But secondly, there is no truly even a harm. They suggest the evidence is far from certain that these algorithms are actually causing addiction to this media. Children in years prior would spend hours on television or books despite any form of algorithms or recommendation. We would also note that the likelihood is that content becomes more extreme if there's not recommendation algorithms leaning children, minors into this way. We're happy to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to the concluding speeches of both teams, starting with King's College London, that is in favor of the motion. You now have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Honourable judges, organisers, and Melbourne team, it has become clear that the key issue is quite simple. Whether fully prohibiting for minors addictive recommended designs is the most effective mechanism for protecting children online. We reaffirm a position as proposition. Only such a prohibition of addictive features, thus the redesigning of platforms for minors, can safeguard their mental health and cognitive development. First, opposition claimed that addictive recommended designs are not the problem, and that harmful content, which is already regulated. However, we showed that there is strong support for regulating addictive recommended designs as the problem. Law is abundant relative to big tech companies with provisions for minors. there is growing awareness of the threat they represent. We can cite the Digital Services Act, the Californian Protecting Our Kids from Social Media Addiction Act, which are clear examples. Design is different from content as well. The design can be harmful in itself through the engagement imperative it creates and simply through addiction. And the UNCRC is unequivocal. Children have rights to health and development, whichever form it might take, which addictive recommender designs have been firmly accused of hindering. Second, opposition argued that such a ban would be unenforceable. However, we demonstrated how governments are well positioned to implement such a ban and manage to reduce exposure, a crucial step. We maintain that firms have no incentives to self-regulate, and that governments instead may act locally and appropriately. In cases such as KGMV Meta and the European Commission's investigation on TikTok show a new focus on algorithms specifically as well, and show that such texts are enforceable, and that definitions as well are being clarified with charges filed over features such as infinite scroll or autoplay. This is why we argue in favor of the motion as the most effective way of protecting minors online. I thank you for your time and attention and submit back to the judges.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, the concluding speech of the University of Melbourne that is against the motion. You now have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you please confirm that you can see and hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Then I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Honourable judges and my fellow colleagues, the affirmative paints the recommender as the reason why kids are disengaged and disconnected with their parents. But these are just what kids are like. Whilst we can agree that there are risks to recommender systems, putting kids in a digital cage is just not the fix. Their cure fails to provide details of what total prohibition means, but it also just does not discuss the consequences that it could potentially create, which we argue far outweighs any effect of addictive recommender systems. And so I want to reiterate 3 major points that we've provided here today. The first is that it is an authoritarian overreach. Under Article 18 of the UNCRC, parents and not the states have the primary responsibility for a child's upbringing. A total prohibition fires the parents and hires the state, and it replaces parental guidance with state-mandated censorship. Secondly, it is a privacy disaster. To ban these systems for minors, you must first verify every adult, and this forces millions of adults to surrender biometric data just to browse the internet. Third, we must choose smart regulation over total bans. If an algorithm helps a child find a science video, the algorithm isn't the problem, and that's what the opposition has been arguing here today. It is the settings. We should mandate safety by design by turning off autoplay and infinite scroll and not the system altogether, and do so through regulations which are smart, which work together with the companies and with the economy and with how children actually interact. Until the affirmative are able to provide us with answers about how they choose to enact these sort of prohibitions, the opposition will firmly believe in regulation and not prohibition. We should be installing traffic lights, not tearing up the digital roads entirely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can all now relax since we have closed with the official phase of the match. So before I proceed with your own feedback and to the networking questions, I would like to once again thank all of your coaches and also the judge attending the match today. So would you like to give a word to the participants about their performance?
Hello, good afternoon. Good morning, actually, sorry. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you all of you for your arguments. I took part in this debate competition myself, which I think it's been 6 years now, 6 or 7 years ago, and I continue to be amazed at each year by the sort of level of debate that you get to see. So it's really also a great honor for me to be here. So thank you very much. In terms of feedback, well, overall, I think I'll keep it quite brief. I think overall the caliber was really, really high. I mean, it really is. It's telling you made it to the round of 16. I mean, you've gotten so far, and I mean, of course, one always expects a certain level of greatness, but you really surpassed all my expectations, and it was truly a joy to listen to. And I think two of the very good things I can highlight are one, that you respond to the other person's arguments. I think that's exceptionally good. Whether it's the rebuttal, whether when you're really being put on the spot, both teams I noticed were very, very strong in responding to the other person's arguments and not just repeating something off a script. The second thing, which I think that both teams did really well, is really signposting and really laying out in a nice manner what your arguments are, what you're addressing, using things like firstly, secondly, third. And I think that really makes a difference to a judge who's maybe not so familiar with the topic in terms of research and stuff as you are, but it's really, really good to hear. Now, it really helps me to follow what's going on. In terms of perhaps more constructive feedback, I think one thing, I'm not going to name names at all, but I think it's really important to keep a more measured pace. At times it can be, you have a lot of things to say, you have a lot of arguments, and I'm cognizant that the time constraints can be quite demanding, but I think it's really, really effective advocacy if you keep a measured pace, because then even if you slip up and you keep giving yourself pauses, you can give your mind some time to think about what the next word is that's going to leave your mouth, and you don't have those awkward filler words where you have an moment and where you really have to just really rack your brain to think of what you were about to say next. And I think overall, also in terms of listening to it, it's just so much better if you're being a bit more slow and composed, rather than it seeming like you're in a huge rush, even though you might have very good arguments. I'm not going to address substantive arguments as much. I think very interesting arguments, very creative. I think it's really good that you used case law, you used cases, you used examples of legislation, be it from your own countries or be it from more regional levels, like the EU Digital Services Act was mentioned. The final thing, which I would just say after the thing about pace, is perhaps try to, when you make your closing arguments, it would be very useful to really reiterate what the other person said and then really make your argument clash against that, so you can really see that juxtaposition. It was done. I'm not saying it wasn't done, but I think that could be a little bit stronger, so that you can really see the contrast and the sort of fallacy in your opponent's argumentation. But yeah, thank you very much for this, and really, I mean, you'll get a more comprehensive feedback form with the scores and everything in due course, but it was really a joy to watch, and thank you very much to all of you, and congratulations for making it so far, and really I wish you all the best of luck in the next stages. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your constructive feedback. And now we would like to hear, maybe starting with the University of Melbourne, and any of you can take the floor. How did you find the debate? How did you find the preparation for that topic? Were you surprised by the arguments of the opposing team?
I'll take it. Thank you. Hi, my name's Joseph. I thought the topic was very interesting, very topical. A lot of the things that we've talked about are happening in real time. And so I wouldn't be surprised if within the next weekend, everything that we've just said flips on its head and loses its effectiveness. So I thought that was a very interesting part of some of the case studies that we looked at. A lot of this is what courts are still trying to grapple with, I think, and that the law is trying to grapple with. So it was nice to kind of be a little bit at the forefront of it and just see what policymakers and what decision makers are thinking about. I think on the whole we all got a little bit entrenched in just how complex technology really is.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Now from King's College London, your insights about the same questions.
I think if I may go first, we're not in the same room, so it's a bit like there's coordination happening. I think that debate was particularly interesting because it's very current and there's really a lot of arguments that can be made and a lot of law that can be summoned. I think it was a bit of a challenge to choose what was the strongest legislation, what was the strongest case that we could use, and then to also mobilize all this during the debate to respond properly. I think that was the particularity of that debate compared to the others for me.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Now from the University of Melbourne again, would your colleagues like to add something?
Yeah, sure. I think in terms of the preparation and kind of how we went about it, I think there was an element there of obviously because this is quite topical, and it's specifically topical in Australia where we've just implemented a social media ban outright, not even just the algorithms themselves, but all of that content as well, for people under the age of 16. I think there was almost like a hesitancy for us to frame this all in just that context, and so I think we were very conscious of throwing in different examples, and I'm glad we did because clearly this debate became significantly much more around an international context. Like you mentioned, there was EU regulations brought up and just general UN propositions. So that was just something that we were thinking about and conscious of before this.
Thank you. And now back to King's College London.
Yeah, I can go ahead if you don't mind, Kalita. It was a really enjoyable preparation experience and debate as well. Like, I agree with everyone. It's very relevant, very topical. In terms of the arguments of the other team, from what I've found in debating, usually both teams are kind of on the same page about your research, your arguments. But I think in this debate, there were a few points that came up that our team hadn't really thought of or prepared for. So it was a nice challenge to be able to listen to new arguments that we didn't consider, and it was kind of a challenge to think of counter arguments on the spot. But it was a good challenge. I think it was very beneficial that we were able to hear these new perspectives as well.
Thank you very much. And now back again to the University of Melbourne for your last colleague, if you would like to add something.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that's over. I think I really found it super interesting. I kind of come from a very artsy, sciencey background, and so it was really interesting looking into social media, how it works across the world, how it's very different in Western countries opposed to other countries, and also having a look at the legislation, seeing what works, what doesn't, what gaps we can use and rely on in our speech. So it was very interesting. But also, I just found it really fun learning with my colleagues as always and hearing others talk and debate. I think it's all very edifying.
That's nice. Thank you. And now
Thanks.
back to King's College London.
Yeah, I quite liked this motion. I think it's been my favorite motion so far during this whole tournament. I just think there was so much to say for both sides, and there was just so much thinking on what can we use, what shouldn't we use, what should we target, and things like that. And I just found it really interesting because, I mean, as Melbourne already said, it's just such a debated issue today, and it's just currently debated and developing in real time. So I think it's definitely really interesting.
Thank you. And okay, now that the feedback is done, we can move on with the networking questions. So, okay, I would like to switch and start with King's College London. And I would like to ask you, and you can take the floor in any order that you want, what opportunity, program, or initiative at your university has most contributed to your development as law students?
I think in my university, your development as a law student, it really depends on associations. I feel like more than like university programs because I'm doing my exchange at King's, but I come from a French university, and there, like, it's not just law. So it's going to be much more political science oriented. So I feel like, for example, the European Law Student Association is the most important association in my like development as a law student. Like I did moot courts through that, but the university itself, I don't really know.
Fair enough. Now from the University of Melbourne, same question goes for you.
I would say, I think when it comes to opportunities, there's three different levels. One, I think being a globally recognized university is very helpful just in terms of private opportunities and like our ability to see what sort of work experience that we can get. Secondly, I think the ability to work with academics is uh, is quite popular in our university. So a lot of research work is done, and there's a lot of ability to connect with academics and see where you can collaborate. And I think at a third level, socially, we do a lot of competitions. We do a lot of things to kind of mix and get to know our cohort. And so I think I can't really put it down to one particular program, but I think a mixture of all three of those things have really contributed to my development. Hopefully, I can speak for my colleagues, hopefully their development as well.
Thank you. And now back to King's College London for the same question.
I can go with Afrin. You're okay with it? I think King's College has so many opportunities and societies that push me to be a better law student. I mean, I personally, I heard from this competition via the European Law Society Association. So that's how I came to be here today. And as well, the Commercial Law Society, I've done competitions for them as well. So I think King's College does a really good job, and especially the students within King's College, in providing opportunities for each other and helping each other have access to different things that help a law student's future career and development. So I think our university does a really good job, and our students as well.
Thank you. And now again, the University of Melbourne.
Hello, it's me again. I think, putting aside like the trivia nights, bowling nights that our law society runs, which I really enjoy. I think I learned a lot from being on the Melbourne University Law Review. I think that's actually one of my entryways to international law, looking at all sorts of treaties on euthanasia, which was one of my first articles. But secondly, I think competitions. I think I've done a lot of competitions like mooting, arbitration, negotiation, but I've never done a competition like this one, which is a law debate tournament. So I think all of those competitions have been so formative for me in terms of developing my ability to advocate, developing my thinking skills on the spot, under time pressure with amazing competitors, and working alongside my friends. So I think those are the two categories of experiences that I found really, really wonderful throughout my time in law school so far.
Thank you. And now your last colleague from King's College London.
I think for me, it would probably be moot court and debating. I'm just going to clump those two together. I kind of got into law because I really enjoyed the oral advocacy part of it. But once I started debating and mooting, I realized that it kind of develops my skills on a more holistic way. I'm able to develop research skills. I'm able to develop written argument skills, oral advocacy, all of that. So I think because it's such an all-round competition, all-round experience, I think that has really helped develop me as a law student.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Foster from the University of Melbourne.
Yeah, I would actually say something very similar. I think obviously we learn about case law and we cover these things in class, but it's the way that that's applied in the context of mooting and the various moots that are either run internally at the university or intervarsity. All of those involve a level of kind of rigor and understanding of the specific niche areas of the law that are covered in those moots that I think is really, really beneficial. I was saying to a friend that for one of the moots that we had done, I don't think I'd ever read a series of cases from the primary judgment up until the various stages of appeal in as much detail as I had for that move. And I think that's just a really interesting thing. It lets you explore those things. And so, yeah, I think those competitions really offer excellent insight, I guess.
Thank you so much. And now for the second question, now I'm going to start again with the University of Melbourne. Any of you can take the floor. And the question is, what is a common misconception about your legal system, country, or region that you would like to clarify?
That is a tough question. I don't know if I could speak to misconceptions about our legal system per se. I would say culturally, perhaps, Melbourne, I guess Australia in general, is perceived as being a place just full of beaches and whatnot. And while there are beautiful beaches in the rest of Australia, I don't know if Melbourne particularly is the one for that. I guess my name is Jay Foster, and I think another misconception is all Australians love, I guess, what is it, shrimp on the barbie and Foster's beer. I don't know if those things are particularly true either. Yeah, I guess those are just more cultural misconceptions, but yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment.
Thank you. And before moving now to King's College London, would any of your colleagues like to add on to that?
I think maybe the only thing I'd add to that is I feel like our legal system is quite comprehensive and well developed. And I think maybe if you have like a relaxed perspective on Australia being about beaches and shrimp on the barbie and having a Foster's beer, you might miss out on some really great judgments and some really great legal minds that come through, fortunately, through Australian courts. Yeah, I think that's all I'd have to add.
Thank you.
I think
Yes, please.
I was just going to say, I think this is something not just specific to Australia, but internationally, which is that what I learned being like a research assistant for a barrister and just watching a bunch of cases is that oftentimes real life court differs significantly from those depicted on television. And I think that's quite topical in this case. I've watched Suits. I think a lot of us probably have watched Suits. It was entirely different when I showed up to court for the first time expecting some sort of melodrama happening between the judge and the barristers. It did not turn out like that at all. So I think that's another difference I'd like to add on to the list.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. And now for the same question to King's College London.
I guess I can go first. I mean, I'm not from the UK. I mean, King's College is a very international, has so many international students, and I'm one of them. I am half Dutch, half Mexican, but I think, and speaking for the Dutch legal system, it's not a misconception, but I guess there is a general reputation that it is more like lenient and progressive. I think the most famous law that most people know is that weed is legalized, and I guess a misconception of that would be that it's not as lenient as I guess people would think, because you are fined for doing it publicly, and there is still a lot of expectations that you have to meet when it comes to using certain substances in the Netherlands. So I think that could be a misconception.
Thank you. Whoever likes, you can add on.
I mean, I'm not English either, so I'm French. I think the main conception about France is that it's extremely complex, and it's not a misconception. Like, it's very true. So yeah, I feel like in France you've got anyway too much law because people write everything. So at that point, if you don't read everything, you don't know what's happening. There's too many categories. So I think that, like, you were asking also what could be clarified in the legal system. I think like a bit of making people understand what the law really is, like especially in relation to what the state can do and cannot do. I feel like that probably should be clarified to most people, because as a law student, you learn about this over years, but as a person who is perhaps being treated unfairly, then you don't really have the same chances. So I think that's one thought about the French system. For Britain, I really don't know, but they also have a lot of like more jurisprudence than we do. So I think that's, I mean, the law perhaps is clearer, but then you have all the judges' opinions. So I guess it doesn't really, like, there's no one way to go around it.
Mhm. Thank you. And lastly, Miss Ali.
I'm also not English. We are really representing how diverse London and Kings is in general. So I'm from India. I did not grow up there, so I don't have a lot to say about Indian law. But I did grow up in the Middle East and in a couple of places. And I think there tends to be in Middle Eastern countries. And that's not necessarily true. Obviously, there is a blend of Sharia, which is the Muslim law, with the domestic law, but it does not really govern every single aspect of your life if you're a non-Muslim. I think it tends to be a lot more free than people expect. I think people kind of view a lot of Middle Eastern Muslim countries as very strict, very conservative. But I think it's really not as intense as people think it is.
Thank you so much. All of your insights were very interesting to hear. Before giving the floor to my colleague, Mr. Lorange, I would like to encourage all of you to stay in touch with each other and even after the matches, because it's a great opportunity to be able maybe to even visit each other and always have someone in another country. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague now for the closing remarks.
Yes, so it was a very, very nice match to watch, and congratulations again for reaching this level of the competition. For the audience as well, I want to tell that it is the 5th time the University of Melbourne is reaching the 8th finals, and it is the first time for the King's College London from all the teams who participated, so well done, and of course the winner of this match will meet the winner of another match in quarterfinals. That will be the winner of the match between the University of Bologna and the University of the South Pacific. That will be in 2 weeks, the quarter-final match. And indeed, I encourage as well to connect between the student associations. I know that you are very active. You have very developed. Student association both sides. So between the Melbourne Law Student Association, Law Student Society, sorry, MLS, and ELSA King's College London, of course. So if you want to connect and to have events as well online or in person, that would be great. So well done for this match, and I want to thank as well Mr. Kazi, former participant, indeed 6-7 years ago, was representing the University of Applied Science. And now you are in Germany, I guess. Yeah. No, in Sweden? No.
Neither. I'm in The Hague again. I'm at the courts.
Okay. So thank you to connect live, and the two other judges as well will be watching the match as well, and we'll send and publish the results during the next days. So well done, congratulations. Good evening, rest of the evening in Australia, and rest of the day, of course, in UK. So bye. Thank you. Keep in touch. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.